I'm going to talk a little bit about this experience, and then I'll leave it open for kind of the larger, broader discussion around outreach in general and where it's going, and I can kind of give you some input in terms of locally and then how it's plugged into nationally and then also internationally around this particular project. We premiered in Sundance, so it doesn't hurt that if you can get present somewhere, you use that buzz to generate an audience, a much larger audience. We premiered in 2012 on PBS. It's still on PBS. We did outreach screenings in schools, in city halls, churches, correctional facilities, and court-mandated screenings. So we did a lot of different kinds of screenings. We did one here in Chicago. The mayor hosted like a small thing. We did one in Philly. We did one in New York. We did one in Oakland, New Orleans. So we were able to really build a lot of buzz around it. We did this Youth Promise Act, which was out of D.C. that was connected to, at the time I was still working for Congressman Rush. So we did like a brief screening before the film came out at CBC in 2010. So that kind of helped, and then so we came back, and so that kind of led inroads. So I'm saying that to say is that once you do have that kind of presence and you are able to then take your film and apply it to different sets, so utilizing a resource. So for me, I'm a connector. So I'm the kind of person, oh, you should be over here, or I know so-and-so, why don't you see? So that's a vital piece for your film, especially those people who are doing the work actually on the ground. And if they have that kind of competency where they actually are filmmakers too, so it doesn't hurt. Social networks. We built a big online presence, and so it's not just me, it's Tim, who you guys probably know from Cartimquin, myself, and two other folks who are manning the Facebook page. So I post stuff there, all type of relevant stuff. So the problem with, or the issue, it shouldn't be a problem, it's not necessarily a problem, it was the audience, right? So I want to plant that because the audience in this particular case is there was a wide audience. It was the WTTW audience, which is, you all know as black folks, that's the window to Winnetka audience, which is great. That's what they call it. Oh, well, that's what it's called. It's the window to Winnetka. And it has a great application for filmmakers because that's where a lot of the funders are, right? But when you start talking about using film as a tool for social impact, it's not necessarily the same audience. So we built a social network presence, and that's still ongoing. So we have this, and we have a Twitter page as well that we use a lot. So we still post stuff regularly. So if you do put up a Facebook or a Twitter page, you got to use them. You have to use them. I mean, like that's a different training, and we can go into social media, how you use social media. But if it lays dormant, people are not gonna, you gotta engage people too. And you have to pick what kind of engagement you're gonna use on the different platforms because they yield different results. In July 2011, we did a youth media summit at Columbia College. I brought like 100 students from across the different smaller, so I come out of the youth media world. So I taught at street level, youth media, pros arts, so after school matters when I was young and had some hair. And so teaching video, so like Margaret's program, so I was one of the instructors in that. So we brought True Star and all of these different young people together to tell the stories and help inform us about some of the things we were thinking about in terms of our engagement strategy. And these are some of the clippings that we got from, this is from the Columbus Dispatch, the New York Times. There's a ceasefire component, and I'll put that up there. You can hold on to that piece around ceasefire and organization when you do something around, when your subject matter is controversial, you know, and you're also trying to use the film as a tool for advocacy or something like that. We did a lot of school screenings. We've definitely used this kind of video, Skyping us in. Google Hangout is excellent. It's the best, actually. So they've improved it a lot. So we've done a lot of stuff in engaging young people in their definition for violence. And this is the Youth Promise Act. It didn't, of course, go far, but nonetheless, we did engage with this organization that was in DC, an advocacy organization that did this around the country. They had like a screening night. So it is ways that you can connect with a larger organization that you can then share your film with and think about how to package that. We did a lot of mentorship opportunities. So it's kind of led, and this, for this particular film, Eddie, who's an artist, did a lot of stuff. And so he took his stuff live off of the camera and had an opportunity to start doing work. Well, he was already doing work, but increasing his bandwidth. We got, one of the interrupters linked up with Joaquin. He saw the film. He's become a big supporter of the film after seeing the film. There's the pictures of him. This was at the screening with our beloved favorite mayor of all time. And I said that. This is more stuff around the interrupters. And so when I first came on, knowing having a backdrop really helped, because I knew that Ceasefire has some real complicated issues in the community. I had served on Ceasefire's board in Grand Boulevard, so I knew that a lot of it was hype. And there was not, not necessarily, it was a complex story from its origins to where it is now, right? And so the film didn't highlight necessarily the organization, but by proxy, the organization gets highlighted. So, but that didn't still make for good company for the organization that was featured. He was pissed because the organization wasn't a film about Ceasefire. It ended up being more so a film about Amina, about the subjects and the work that they do. So I took that and played off of it as a metaphor, because we're all interrupters in that case. And so we've kind of built on that idea. And so this was earlier on. And so I came up, so there had always been this kind of part around doing something with interactive media, of taking it outside of just the film. So if you show the film, that's one piece, but then what? What else can the film do? So we'll have a conversation, but then what? The convo ends, and as much as I am a connector, I like to act. Let's make something happen, right? Or at least be in the process of making something happen. Move your feet and pray, right? Same. So we developed this multi-engagement platform called Interrupt Violence. It's a tool to help reconnect communities that have been ravaged by violence, create discussion about cause and effects of violence, and link visitors to resources or interrupters in the community. So we came up with this idea. We tried to get money for it. The first time, I think Sundance, but we didn't get money for the outreach stuff, right? Because it had been shifting to engagement, right? And it's important you guys know these terms too, because that's what you're going to be putting in your proposals. So we ended up shifting it a bit, and then went back to ITVS, and then I came up with this concept called the Living Shrine. At the time, it wasn't called the Living Shrine, it was called In the Dash. It still is kind of In the Dash, which was to take what we had a lot of extra footage in the film around these scenes of shrines across the city. And so I thought to myself, like, in my 39 years, that I had lost a dozen or so friends of my own, and that, you forget about these names. Right? But this is also part of the teardown of the community. That's the story that you really don't get. That's the next story. And so how do you keep the story going is where the outreach and engagement campaign can really, and particularly with the new tools, that you can continue to build off of that story. So we're still in the process of doing that. This idea of epic that we took around epic storytelling, which was to engage, to preserve, inform, and connect. It's kind of how we had packaged it. This gives you a glimpse of the interactive website that we built, and I'm going to give you guys a preview of it. We're way behind schedule, so this is also another learning experience about who you're bringing on, you know what I mean, how much time you got to commit to it, you know what I mean. It's a baby within a structure, because it's really like Steve and Alex are like, yeah, that's great, but that's not what I'm doing. That's on you, you know what I mean? And that's on, and so we brought on another person, Andrew, to kind of help manage, because I work full time and do 12 other things. So, but this is what we've developed, like this kind of immerse, and we talked about transmedia. So using outreach and the new technology tools to use it as a way to outreach to new audiences. So we've got this persistent problem type, so we kind of give a backdrop of it. So we use, like when you were doing your films, you have like all of this footage that you have left over. What do you do with it? It's a great way to have, you know, there's other pieces that didn't even make it onto the actual film that we're reintegrated into this. So then we have the interactive stories. So what we did is just broke it up into really smaller bite-sized theme modules, and then brought on actually Assistant Monica, who works at CPS, and she wrote the curriculum. We kind of gave her the ideas, and we wrote curriculum around each of the different modules. So then they stand alone, so now teachers can use it. So most of this is all open source, but you know, what we're looking to do is that you still have to have somebody to drive it, a few people to help drive it. This is HTML5, and since I'm amongst filmmakers, you guys already know. So initially, Steve and I went to San Francisco about, I guess 2 years ago now. So we went out there because we got funding from ITVS. ITVS is a subsidiary of the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which is a quasi-government agency. So it is a government agency, but it's a quasi, like the Federal Reserve. It's private. They're a partnership. So ITVS gets money from PBS, which is also the public broadcasting system, and then the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So their grants range from 15 to I think up to 150, and if they really love you, they'll find some more money for you. So really, it's a relationship. So it's a relationship. So now in this work, this is all like new work in terms of transmedia. So we're just all experimenting. So we went out to Mozilla brought us out to San Francisco, and there was several groups of us who use documentaries, and we're using documentaries as a tool to kind of push the ball forward in storytelling. So one of the things that we really end up doing now is called a hackathon, and what we did is just kind of pulled apart a clip of the film and then use the new technology to kind of layer the rest of, this concept of a shrine. Like, we could find out more about this person that you only saw a name flash on the screen. But then I was able to source all the stuff around what happened to that young man and build a story, and then we had extra clips that didn't make it. So now you got its own, and that's what transmedia is. Kind of you build out your own little piece. This is the community resource guide that we worked on early. I think it's important. I think that's fundamental. Most people who do documentaries, they do some kind of resource guide. They expect you to do that. This is the shrine component that I talked about. And I'll show you a live version. So it does mapping and the whole nine. We got a discussion page. So we've got tweeters and thought leaders and social media. Discussions. So we've integrated Twitter and, original thoughts on this outreach. So this is the most important part, is that through this process, I got a database of like 700 folks across the world who've seen the film, who are now doing the work, but you now have a network. So we've created just a few shrines because it's still a beta site, so it's not fully live, but you can go and see. So I did a few tributes to folks that I knew, and then you can build out. So we've kind of built it like a Pinterest. So, when you go and see a little bit about Damo, you then get to see about his story, and then the element that you can then do graphics, add different videos, other photos of him. You can explore a little bit about his life through the user telling the story themselves. So nonetheless, you can create, and then you can have, you put his bio up, and you can create a dedication to your loved one.
I got, I guess maybe two related questions. So you said in passing they expect you to have an outreach plan, or you said something like that. So can you say a little bit, kind of back up?
Okay, I am trying to. All right.
When you're proposing or writing a grant proposal, a lot of times now you're required to have something called an outreach plan, or what was the other word you used for?
Engagement.
Engagement plan. before you get any beginning money to even start. So can you say a little bit about that, and then can you give us a ballpark about how much something like this level costs? So when you're starting, say, you know, you have an idea for a film and you want to go for some money, a lot of times you have to have an outreach and engagement plan from the beginning when you're starting, just you haven't even made the film yet.
Right. So in that case, I think what really hit it for me in thinking through this was thinking about the audience. Who's the audience in mind, right? What's the benefit for the audience? That's what the engagement process that you can kind of build off of that. You can go into like who else is kind of trying to tell this story that's similar, but I think that's where the real nuggets of like, who is this film really designed to speak to? Right, as a filmmaker or as an artist, it's like, this is mine, it's my vision, but you go through the whole process of birth, you have to share it, and filmmaking is a complete shared medium, so you can't just do it, I mean, you could, but then it's not the same, right? In terms of how much this cost, so we started small, so first we got a grant from ITVS, no, let me back up, I'm wrong. First we got a grant from Tribeca Film Institute. So we're part of the first class of their, what they call their sandbox, which is this interactive storytelling stuff. So this is what they're interested in funding now, very much so. So you can go to Sandbox, and I'll send this to you because it has a lot of different of these same kind of projects. And it's a small, you'll see this, you know, it's a small collective, and it's growing because this year they had the same folks. They list resources from here in the States, and then IFDA is the one that's over in Europe that does a lot of this funding for this. They didn't do anything this time. But what they did for us is last year when we went to Tribeca and see Question Bridge, so it doesn't have to be new media either. So Question Bridge was from a few years ago, and they funded Hank and that project. And so our project was in year 1. And you can highlight this, and they brought us out to New York and kind of gave us even like for us to kind of explore what this medium, where the potentials are. So we got $85,000 from them. Then we got some money from ITVS, maybe about, I think 100, I think something like that. And then we got money from the Bertha Foundation, and then Bertha. Bertha. They fund a lot of stuff. Yeah, Bertha. Bertha gave us 125. Yeah. So, because this website costs us about, it was probably too much because we got the wrong vendor, but that's another situation when we have more time. This costs about 50 G's right here, right? So it was not cheap, and it's still not where we want it to be. So I'm a little irate, but nonetheless. You know what I mean? But it's still, that's how much it costs. So then we kept building on it. So then I came out and applied for a Motorola, which is now Google mobile app. So we got $15,000 to do a mobile app. We ain't did nothing with it yet, but so you can see that you keep, and now we're going for some more money to keep it so that I could actually now come back to my project and really do this as, you know, as the kind of coordinator behind the scenes in that type of sense. So I thank you all for listening to my impromptu. I'm sorry that it wasn't all the way pulled together. Okay. But I can answer any questions you have. I mean, I'll send out the link for Interrupt Violence, and I'll send this link out to other ones so you can see the best. So why this is moving towards this, so the big funders, the Ford Foundation, Ford Foundation funds Tribeca, and Tribeca is funding us. And so there's also ITVS. I think I might be forgetting. I'll put it in notes as well. It's like where are the other big funders around engagement. And I think somebody was saying like we don't always give credence to our own stories to really make them as imaginative as possible, right? And not to be afraid of that, of letting it go, because that's a big part of it, because somebody else does that. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, you know. But I think we have a different, and this is a powerful group, we have a unique opportunity to tell our stories in a different way, in particular around this new medium that you can integrate these different voices to tell the story. So that's where it's moving to. in terms of once convergence happens and that the TV and the internet aren't separate like we have them now.
Can I ask a question? So, if I'm not mistaken, this project is not live yet.
No.
But you did do like more of a traditional engagement with the public for the past few years. That's what you've been doing.
Right. We got funded for that too.
Okay. What was the budget for just like a traditional engagement?
So I want to say it was like $100 grand for this. So MacArthur found. So what funders usually do is if they fund your film, they would probably fund your outreach or a component of your outreach work.
Now, connected to that question is what effect do you think your project and your engagement would have had if you would have had this done when you started, like combined it with the traditional engagement? Like each time you went to a new city, you were introducing this website and getting people to get on it. Like, what do you think?
I think it would have been so much more powerful because I think, but also the technology wasn't quite there. So this kind of emerged at the same time that we were doing this. I think as we are all connected on the internet, I mean, through our listserv, so if there's other questions you guys have, I'm on there. So, and I'm, Anton at cartemplin as well.com.